Thank you. Thank you very much for that. It's been a busy day today. Our plane landed this morning about 6 o'clock in the morning. Zoomed over to the school, was able to talk to 1,100 high school kids throughout the day. They lined up for hours afterwards. I got to just listen to their stories. I got to hear confessions. I didn't absolve anybody, but heard a lot of confessions. And it's just been a blessed day. And so thank you to everybody who made that possible. I want to thank you for coming here tonight. It looks like about 80% moms we've got tonight. So thank you, moms, for turning out. Grateful to see the husbands as well. It's great when you can come together, obviously, to these things. I know it's not always possible, but I'd heard of one couple, married couple, they're kind of having whatever issues, and so they decide to go to counseling, right? And they sit in front of the counselor, and the wife starts off, and she's like, you know, my husband here, he's not as affectionate as he used to be. He's not as thoughtful. He's forgetful. He's not a good conversation. The husband just rolled his eyes. So counselor got a feel for what was going on, so he got up from behind his desk, and he walked to where the wife was, and he took the wife in his arms, and he gave her a long, passionate kiss. And then he sat her down and went back to the desk. And he said to the husband, now this is what your wife needs about 3 times a week. And the husband said, okay, I can bring her here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So little misunderstanding here with intimacy. And I think when it comes to misunderstandings with intimacy, I think young people today have so many misunderstandings with intimacy. And I think the root cause of that is because they really don't think about sex, right? Especially teenage boys almost never think about sex, right? They talk about it, they joke about it, they might have it, they watch it on their phones, but how often do they actually pause and think, what is the purpose and the meaning of my human sexuality? And you, me, as the parents, are the primary sex educators. Not the school, not the priests, not the government, the parents. But here's the challenge in that. How many of you, just give me a show of hands, how many of you were given by your parents a clear, adequate, and convincing explanation of the church's teachings on chastity and sexuality? Okay, go on ahead. No, really, raise your hand. Okay, we've got 1.5. Do we have 2, 3, 4? That's great. 1 in 100, fabulous. So basically, you are now being expected to deliver to your kid what was never given to you during a time in history that probably makes it more difficult than ever for them to be pure. And so a lot of parents think like, is my kid even going to listen to me? Aren't they just going to roll their eyes and bury their face back into their cell phones? Well, interestingly, they surveyed more than 1,000 high school kids and asked them, what is the #1 factor that shapes your sexual behavior? Is it the music you listen to, the TV shows, your friends? What's the #1 response among the kids? They said, it's my parents and what they brought me up to believe. #1 reply nationwide. They do listen, although sometimes we doubt that they are. And so we're the primary sex educators. But how do we do this? Because you're literally on a frontier of parenthood that no parent has ever stood at before. The stuff you're up against today wasn't even on the radar 10 years ago. I mean, raising a kid in the 1600s, same thing as raising a kid in the year 600. But raising a kid in 2024 is nothing like it was just decades ago. And so you look what's going on, it's nuts. I mean, the average age at which a kid is first exposed to internet porn today, the average is between 9 and 11 years old. And then you've got the epidemic of STDs, you've got the questions when it comes to who they are as male and female. I was at World Youth Day and a girl pulls out her cell phone and she says, look, Jason, I'm going to Stanford University in the fall and I've got to fill out my college application on the phone. And she said, watch right here. Look, I have to pick my gender to get into Stanford. Watch this. And she just starts scrolling through the list of genders and there were 18 to pick from, but male and female were not options on the list to get into Stanford University. Now, 15 is deemed conservative. Facebook offers its users 58 genders. Facebook in the UK offers 71 genders. It's like, what is going on in the culture? Vatican II said that when God is forgotten, the creature itself grows unintelligible. And what that means is if we lose sight as a culture of supernatural realities, it will come to the point where we can't even see natural realities. We've got the breakdown in sexuality, breakdown within the family. I was speaking at one high school. They had 87 girls pregnant on campus. This didn't include the junior high. Grades 7 and 8 brought the number of pregnancies over 100. And one of the girls we met there is 7 months pregnant, and she just told her parents the news. They didn't know she was 7 months pregnant. She was just wearing baggy clothes and avoiding her parents. And now that they know she's pregnant, she didn't know how to tell them the full story. Okay, the full story is that her boyfriend lives in her closet. Her boyfriend's been living in her closet for more than a year. She brings him up leftovers after dinner. He hops out the window to hang out with friends. This has been going on for a year, and the parents had no idea. And so the moral of the story is, when you get home tonight, just check the closets. No, I'm sure things are going better at your place, but I mean, unbelievable breakdown in the family. And in the midst of the mess, it's easy to get cynical. Isn't everything just going to hell in a handbasket? Because it does. It feels like this hockey stick acceleration and craziness right now. But there's good news. In fact, they've been studying teen sexual activity for the past 30 years, and what they found is teen sexual activity in the last 30 years, the rates of sexual activity have been constantly going down. Last year is the lowest they have ever recorded before. 20% of high school students are currently sexually active, 30% have ever had sex, meaning most high school students are virgins, and the vast majority of those who are not admit privately they wish they waited longer. It was kind of a disappointment. So there's a remarkable amount of young people open to this message of chastity, but they're not often hearing it. And so they surveyed the kids, well, why are you not having sex? Or you're afraid you're going to get pregnant, or you're afraid you're going to get AIDS. What's the reason? Interesting. The reasons why they were not having sex were not because they were afraid of pregnancy and disease. That was at the bottom of the list for why they were not sexually active. The number one reply, it is against my religious and moral values. Number one reply. We're seeing a resurgence of sorts in this virtue of chastity. And you might not see it in the mainstream media, but if we can just explain chastity for what it is, they want it. Steve Jobs, the guy who founded Apple, said that people don't know what they want until you show it to them. I think nowhere is that more true than when it comes to chastity. I saw it at a high school in Texas. A girl came up afterwards dating this controlling, possessive, abusive older guy who treated her like garbage. And I said, sweetheart, you deserve so much better than this guy. Just break up with him. She said, I can't just break up with him. I've given him everything. My virginity, my reputation, my friends, I've lost it all for him. I can't let go of it now. I said, look, I know it's tough, but tell him no more sex and watch what happens. She said, okay, I'll do that. And she took off her necklace and she gave it to me. He said, he makes me wear this. He's so controlling. I said, okay, I'll throw it away for you. And she left. 5 minutes later, she came back happy as can be. She's like, I dumped him. I said, that was quick. She said, yeah, I told him no more sex. He slammed his locker shut. He threw a book at me. He said, where's your necklace? She said, I gave it to the chastity guy. And you see what happens is she tested his love. Do you love me? Do you want me? Or do you only want the pleasure that you're getting from me? And so this is why St. John Paul II said chastity can only be thought of in association with the virtue of love. If we don't make this connection in their minds, it isn't going to last. Because if they don't understand, chastity is the virtue that frees you to love. Because look, if I can't say no to my own sexual impulses, then saying yes to them means nothing. And so it frees me to love. But then it frees you to know if you're authentically being loved. Because if a guy won't stay with a girl unless she's willing to give him that, it's not her that he loves, but the pleasure that he's trying to extract from her. And so this virtue of chastity truly sexually liberates. Okay, well, if it does, well, then how do we sell this to our kids? Well, here's what I would say is a top 10 list of what we got to do at home. First and foremost, people say if you want your kid to save sex for marriage, then send them to that Catholic school. And if that doesn't work, send them to the Catholic youth group. And if that doesn't work, send them to the Catholic correctional facility. And if that doesn't work, then pray, and pray hard. Okay, wait. This is upside down. We have to be convinced as parents our most important task is the interior life of prayer. This is the firm foundation upon everything rests upon. And it doesn't mean just going to Mass on Sunday. It also means let's pray grace before meals. I'd prefer if you can if you're a Catholic family, go to confession once a month as a family. For one, it's a great time to examine your conscience. Because if you don't think you've sinned a lot that month, man, you got 4 people standing next to you that will give you a litany of your imperfections for the last month without missing one of them. But it's also potent for the kids to see, ooh, even dad has to tell his father that he's sorry. Even mom needs to tell her mother at church she's sorry. So this isn't something we get spoon-fed in religion class. We see it with our own eyes. And you might think, look, Jason, we've been doing that. We've been going to mass, we've been praying the rosary, we've been doing this, and now my kid's living with his girlfriend, and he won't come to mass anymore. And then you start blaming yourself. I could have done this, I shouldn't have done that. Look, don't beat yourself up. Because look, who is the best parent in the universe? It's the Heavenly Father. And now look at how messed up all of his kids are down here, okay? It's not because he's a defective father. It's his kids have free will like ours do, and they make dumb choices. But understand, if you persevere in prayer for your kid, and it's not just interceding for the kid, but taking your own prayer life seriously. St. John Paul II, he said, his father never once spoke to him about the priesthood, but he said, my home was my first seminary. Because he said, look, after my mom died, he said, my father's life became one of constant prayer. He said, sometimes I would wake up at night and I'd look into my father's room and I'd see him just kneeling on the floor, just lost in prayer. And he learned from that, men pray. Men take their interior lives seriously. He saw it with his own eyes. Because I'm not going to be a better father to my sons than I am a son to the father. If I don't know how to receive the love of God, how can I transmit that to my kids? And so first is the prayer. And you might think, look, we've been doing this. Persevere in the prayer for your kids. And you might not see the fruit of it yet. Your kid, his free will could be like a dam. I don't want religion shoved down my throat. But I'm telling the years, the weight of all that prayer, one day the dam is going to crack. And all those graces are going to flow into their life. I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow or when they're on their deathbed, but the graces are going to be applied. I know God answers the prayers. I was with a bunch of nuns in the States. They had a little program called Adopt a Nun, where you could financially take care of the living expenses of a retired nun, and in exchange, she'd pray for whatever you wanted. Now, I don't know how that gels with canon law, but they pulled it off. And so the media shows up and they said, we want to do a story about adopting nuns. Have you had any miracles yet? And the sister said, well, yes, we have. And they said, well, give me an example. And the sister said, look, call up that married couple. So they called them up. Now, this husband and wife was having a lot of fertility issues. They couldn't have a full-term pregnancy, and so they adopted a nun. And they asked her to pray that they would have a family. And the couple said, look, we got the letter right here. Look what it says. Dear Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, thank you for financially taking care of me. In exchange for your generosity to me, not only will I be praying for you, I will have every single nun in the convent praying that you would have a family. But she said, oh, P.S., be careful. Sometimes you ask God for an apple, and he wants to give you an orchard. Signed, Sister Mary so-and-so. Oh, yeah, the quadruplets were born on Father's Day, okay? And so God answers the prayers, but not just to pray for the kids, but to fast for them. Because to pray without fasting is like boxing with an arm tied behind your back. It doesn't matter if you're Mike Tyson. If you've got one fist, it doesn't matter that much. And it's not only us that need to fast, the power of this. I spoke to a man today, and he was sharing with me that he knew a priest over in England who was a chaplain in a hospital. And he'd always see these two nurses sitting there in the cafeteria, but they would never eat anything. And so one day the chaplain, the priest, walked up and said, hi, mind if I sit with you? Oh, sure, go on ahead. And he said, I noticed you're always here together, but you never are eating food. Are you fasting? Are you religious? And they said, yes, we are religious and we are fasting, but we're not Christian. We're witches, and we are fasting for the destruction of Christian marriages. Okay, I think we need to pick up our game a little bit. If they're doing that and we refuse to do any penance on Friday whatsoever, we are behind the game. If they're taking it seriously, I think we ought to as well. And this is something from the mouth of Christ. Jesus said that some demons are only cast out when you join prayer with fasting. This is core to the gospel. Prayer and fasting, but join this with offering up of your sufferings. If you were raised in a Catholic home or you went to Catholic grade school, you remember the nuns, offer it up. You don't like this, offer it up. It's too hot, offer it up. Like, what does it mean? It sounds like you're telling me to shut up in a religious way. And that is what's going on, but there's theological significance. It comes from the writings of St. Paul, where he said, I rejoice in my sufferings, because in my body I make up what's lacking in the sufferings of Christ. Now, it sounds kind of blasphemous. Paul's making up what's lacking in the sufferings of Christ. Did Jesus not suffer enough? What he's getting at is that Jesus didn't suffer so you wouldn't have to suffer. Jesus suffered so you would know how to suffer. Because in becoming man, Christ redeemed everything human. Human love, human labor, human suffering. Everything now has a supernatural weight to it. And what this means is that the church is the body of Christ. That's not like a religious metaphor. The church is the extension of the person of Jesus Christ through time, space, and history. He's continuing his work of redemption in his suffering body, which is your cancer, your unemployment, your alcoholic spouse, like every form of human suffering. When joined to the cross, takes on the power of the cross. John Paul II knew this very well. A priest came to him once with a broken leg, and he shows the Pope his broken leg. He said, "Holy Father, will you bless my leg? It's broken." John Paul took one look at him and said, "Don't waste your suffering." And then he smacked him. And then he blessed him after the smack, but he got the blessing. He's trying to wake him up. Look, if you have crushed grapes, you have wine. Don't spill the wine. There's value in human suffering. In fact, a friend of mine, he and his wife almost lost their baby after delivery. The kid was in the neonatal care unit with gas and needles and everything, and the baby was hanging by a thread the first week of his life, and the baby lived. But my friend said, we suffered so much that first week, not knowing if he'd pull through or not. He said, we suffered so much. He said, if I didn't know how to offer up that suffering as a prayer, he said, it would have been so much grace wasted. He said, that would be like having a winning lottery ticket in your hand, and you're illiterate. You don't know what the numbers mean. All of this potential wealth squandered because you don't know how to read it. And so what this means is prayer joined to fasting and the offering of suffering is the greatest force in human history. This is the first and foundational point, the interior life. The second thing I would say is when it comes to abstinence and chastity, set that standard high and you make it clear. Abstinence until marriage. Not, I want you to be abstinent, but if you're gonna do it anyway, at least use protection. Like, oh, come on. You don't give your kid that message with drinking and drugs, like, don't drink and drive. But if you are going to drink and drive, drive slowly on the way home from the party. It's like, no, you don't give them a message of risk reduction, but of risk avoidance if it's objectively harmful. Because kids think in terms of black and white. And it's not that, okay, once you get married, then sex is legal. No, you got your certificate. Now you can have sex. What it means is that when you're married and you're making love, your bodies are speaking the truth. I give myself completely to you. I am all yours. But if they're not married, it's a lie in the language of the body. And so what we need to tell the kids is it's not just about waiting to cross that finish line. It's speaking the truth in our bodies as husbands and wives. And even the goal of marriage, though, is being torn down. I was invited to speak at a public high school in New York. Right before the talk, the school canceled. And the principal called me and said, I'm sorry, we got to back out. We can't do the talk. I said, did something arise? And she said, well, you know, the teachers here are getting kind of nervous that you're coming to talk to the kids about abstinence. And I said, well, ma'am, remember, it's a public school talk. There's no religious content. It's totally secular. She said, that's not it. The teachers are afraid you're going to say a particular word during the talk. I said, okay, well, what's the word? I'll just kind of work around it. She said, the teachers are afraid you're going to say the word marriage during the talk. I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you want me to tell the kids to save sex for? Like, save it for later? I'm like, that's after sixth period, lady. Like, where's the finish line here? But they literally canceled the talk because they didn't want the kids to even hear the word marriage, which means we need to speak it and live it all the more boldly. And so the second point, set that standard high and make it clear of abstinence until marriage. Third point, I would say, is try to be a parent first and not a buddy. I mean, all of us are afraid, like if I'm too rigid, my kid's gonna rebel. If I'm too lenient, then they'll just do stupid things. Well, maybe I am too rigid, I don't know, he calls me Hitler, I don't know if he's exaggerating, it's just a metaphor, like always doubting ourselves. But the way that I look at it is, look, your kids have an abundance of buddies, but only one set of parents. And so when you give them boundaries, curfews, rules, they're gonna push back a little bit, but it's healthy pushback. They need that. It gives them permission to blame you for why they can't be stupid. So if they're at a party and someone pulls out the weed, they're like, oh, I can't smoke that. My mom would shoot me if she smelled that on me when I got home. So you become the reason they can't do it. I know of one girl, she was on a date with a boyfriend, and the boyfriend said, hey, honey, I think it's time for us to take our relationship to the next level, because like we've been together for like 3 weeks now and everything. And she says, well, I know. And so she gave him the cell phone, and she said, look, here's my dad's number. Give him a call. If he says I can do this tonight, then I'm ready to go. And he's like, I don't want to use up all your data there. This girl knew my dad's got my back on this one. How did she know that her father would be there? Because he was not a passive dad. He spoke to her about this stuff. He intervened in her life. I met a dad at one of these talks. And he said his daughter comes to him one day and said, Daddy, I want to go to the Notre Dame football game on Saturday with my friend Megan. And the dad's like, all right, but you know that's in Indiana. That's like 7 hours away from here. How are you going to get there? And she said, well, this is where you come into our plan, because we want you to drive us to the football game on Saturday. And he's like, honey, I got so much stuff to do around the house on Saturday. I can't just drive 2 girls 7 hours to Indiana. And she pushed him on it. She said, Dad, Megan is my best friend forever, and her dad is your friend. And so we really need a daddy-daughter football Saturday. What do you say, Dad? Because, Dad, before long, I'm going to be off to college, and these memories that we could have made will be long and gone. Oh, fine. So he calls the other dad, and they're like, okay, let's do this. And they're like, okay, what are we going to do with 2 teenage girls in a 7-hour car ride? And they made a plan. Early on Saturday morning, they began the drive. And they said, girls, we have a 7-hour car ride this morning, so we thought we'd spend this time talking to girls about chastity and human sexuality. And the girl's like, ah, right out and jump out the window. But he said, do you know what happened when we got home? He said, my daughter said to me, thanks, Dad, for having the guts to talk to us about what we are too embarrassed to talk to you about. Thank you for initiating that conversation. And obviously, parenthood, your thank yous, you don't get a lot of them, right? I mean, I remember one morning I must have changed like 8 diapers. Not a single kid said thank you. I know they can't talk, but they could wink, or like, thanks for the sewage treatment, old man. But like, they just take. But I promise you that thank you note is in the mail. It might take 10 years to get to your doorstep when they have kids and they're begging you to know how to raise them, but you got to stick to your guns on this one. And it will create tension. But think of a kite. If you want a kite to ascend, you don't run with the kite, you hold back. And it's precisely that tension that allows it to reach its potential. And I know that my type of temperament, I'm more of a people pleaser. Like, I don't like a lot of conflict. I just like to be on good terms with people. And that makes it hard as a parent, because I'm like, look, I know I got to lay down the law here, and it's going to create tension. It's going to last a couple days. I don't like it, but sometimes I just have to get over that. I saw one mom on the internet. She's got this viral video, and she's sitting there in her kitchen. She's got some ice cream there and a glass of wine, and she's like, you know what? All 3 of my teenage kids are mad at me right now for the exact same reason. She said, you know why they're mad at me? Because I parented them. She's like, wah. She's like, it doesn't matter if you're mad at me for that. And she starts drinking the wine, and she's like, it is not my job to be liked by a teenage kid. She said, it is my job to raise you in such a way that I would actually want to hang out with you when you get old enough, okay? And then she starts eating the ice cream, then she's putting the wine in the ice cream, and she's slopping that around, and like, all been there before, but she had this bold indifference. It's like, you don't have to like my rules. In fact, if you do like all of my rules, I'm probably a horribly neglectful parent who wants to have co-ed slumber parties with beer just to win points with the kids. That's not who I am. If you're upset, that's okay. And so to have a little bit of that bold indifference. Obviously, we want friendship with our kids, but ultimately, parenthood before the buddy. 4th thing I would recommend, as much as you can, delay the onset of dating. Because this is what the numbers show right now. They studied 800 high school kids and asked them, when did you start dating and are you still a virgin? Here's what they found. Students who started dating in grade 7, so about 12 years old, those who started dating then, by the time they got to the middle of high school, 90% of the girls and 70% of the boys had lost their virginity by the middle of high school. But the students who started dating at age 16 or older, more than 80% of them were still virgins in the middle of high school. There's wisdom in delaying the onset of dating. and keeping the younger girls away from the older boys who probably don't have enough social skills to date a girl their own age to begin with. And so when it comes to dating though, I think it's really important for one, it's not enough to tell them not to date. We have to teach them how to date. Because I feel for the poor boys, because they go through Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, and they're told everything they can't do. Don't do this, and don't do that, and don't do that. Okay. And then they get to university, and it's like, okay, I got this down. I can't sleep with my girlfriend. I can't look at porn with my girlfriend. I can't live with my girlfriend. I can't clone my girlfriend. I learned that in religion class. Okay, like, great. I know everything I can't do with a woman. What am I supposed to do with one? Oh, we don't teach that. Good luck in college, bye. It's not enough. We have to teach these kids how to date and to explain to them what dating is. The purpose of dating is to find a spouse. It's not because you're bored, it's not because you're lonely, because everyone else has a girlfriend. The purpose of dating is to find a spouse. It's like getting on a freeway with 2 exits, breakup or marriage. That's it. Those are the only potential 2 outcomes. And if that's the reality, what's the point of committing to anybody unless I can see the relationship really going the distance? Which means, especially for the girls that fall into this, no missionary dating, okay? Missionary dating is when you date someone hoping you can fix them or change them or rehabilitate them. It's almost like one of those home makeover TV shows, right? You know, where someone falls in love with this rundown property because they see the investment potential in it. But if the guy was a house, he'd be like some dilapidated, haunted crack house. And she's thinking, oh, we'll put a swimming pool out back and curtains inside. It's like, look, at this point, you're not even dating a person. You're dating a project, okay? You're dating your own imagination. And so what we've got to explain to the kids, John Paul II explained this in Love and Responsibility. He said, before you meet someone, you have preconceived hopes of who that person is going to be. And should they exhibit even the smallest degree of that quality you hope to find, you then bestow upon them, beyond all reasonable bounds, the fullness of that attribute. Which means, if I want to marry someone who's generous, and then I go on a date with a woman, and after dinner she gives her leftovers to some homeless guy outside, I'm like, oh, I'm dating Mother Teresa. This is Mother Teresa. It's like, no, she just couldn't fit any more lasagna in her stomach, okay? So she gave it to the guy. We tend to project our hopes upon someone. And then when the red flags show up, we focus on who they used to be, or who we hope they're going to be, instead of seeing who they actually are. And so what we recommend to the kids is, look, take your time when it comes to dating. Honestly, high school dating is pretty pointless. Because even if you meet a great person, who cares? She could go to university in Perth next year, you could go to Melbourne, then she gets a job in Sydney, you get a job in Adelaide. Like, what's the point right now? Right now is the time to learn to relate men and women as friends. That is the foundation of romantic love. Think of the biggest building in the world. It's the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. The biggest skyscraper is built on sand. How do they pull that off from an architectural engineering standpoint? Underneath it are hundreds of thousands of tons of concrete. To me, that is like friendship as a foundation of romantic love. Because if you get married to anyone other than your best friend, you could have passion, but I don't think you have intimacy. Without friendship, there is no intimacy. And so if we can explain to them, this isn't just about passively putting off romance, this is about actively building the foundation for it. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing in the kids is like a third of the girls are dating, a third of the girls are not dating, and the other third, like they don't even know if they're dating or not dating. And I'll ask them, well, are you guys dating? And they're like, well, we went on a date, but we're not dating. But we are seeing each other, but we're not official. So technically, we're not a boyfriend and girlfriend, but we're definitely a thing. It's like, what is a thing? Like a thing is like a bunion on your foot. Like, you want to be a thing with a guy? Like, well, no, but I don't know what he's thinking. Well, why don't you know what he's thinking? Well, he's not talking. Well, why is he not talking? Well, look, men aren't great communicators to begin with, but that's not really our fault. That's actually God's fault. And no, this is true because women, you might have seen this, speak 3 times as many words as men do starting at the age of 2. You could see this like in a sandbox. The little girls are like, Sally said to Jessica, look at the boys. They have diggers. They're like, boom, boom, boom. Like, and it's not much different in marriage, right? I mean, the average adult female is cranking out 20,000 words a day. Adult male, about 7,000, which means by lunchtime, we hit our quota, right? And then you get home, and the wife is like, oh, how's the big meeting? Good. well, let me tell you about my day. She still has like 19,000 words to go. It's like sipping out of a fire hydrant trying to consume all of that. And they found this doesn't just begin in like childhood. National Geographic did a study of unborn embryos, and they found that female unborn embryos at 6 to 8 weeks of gestation, the mouth begins to move. The male embryo, nothing is going on. I'm sure if you look at her nubby little fingers, she's getting ready to text in there. You know, it's all going on. And so what this means is the guy is not talking to the girl. Why is he not talking? You know what? He might not even be thinking to begin with. In fact, they did this awesome study of male-female brains. They found the female brain, apparently in a particular region, has an exceptionally high level of neurological activity 24 hours a day. Zzz, like it's going. Even in her sleep, zzz, it's going. They found the male brain, on the other hand, will actually enter into states of hibernation while he's completely awake. It just flatlines. Like you wives, you know what I'm talking about. Like, these are the moments you've turned him and he's there, but he's gone. And you're like, honey, what are you thinking about? He's like, but hey, nothing. Like, no, you can't be thinking nothing. What are you thinking about? He's like, no, I'm thinking about nothingness right now. That's impossible. Now she's suspicious. What are you not telling me? I'm not telling you nothing. Like, well, what are you feeling right now? I'm feeling hungry. Like, that's a feeling, right? Does that count? You know, it's a... See what's going on here. The guy's not thinking, the guy's not talking about their status as a relationship, and the poor teenage girl is left there to think like, dude, what is it I need to do to get this guy more invested in me? I know, maybe I'll offer him what he's least likely to reject, namely the physical. But this always backfires on the girl, because I told the girls today, look, what you win a man with is what you keep him with. If you win him with pleasure, then you have to keep him with pleasure. But here's the problem. He can get pleasure anywhere. He can get it off the internet. He can get it from another girl. It's a repeatable asset. If you win him with your body, then you have to keep him with your body. But here's the problem. Every woman has a body. I can't even remember the last woman I met who did not have a body, okay? It's a repeatable thing. But if you win him with who you are as a human being, this relationship is far more likely to go the distance. And all of this to say, let's encourage them to not only delay the onset of dating, but to understand the purpose of dating. Point number 5, I would say, this is kind of a no-brainer, parent networking. Hang out a little bit afterwards. Oh, your son's in grade 11, mine is too. It isn't just good to have some fellowship. It is so important that your kid has friends who have parents who have the same values you do. So they see they're not the only kid in Australia with a curfew. And you also learn good strategies from other good parents. I remember one dad told me, he said, you know what I do to keep my boys in line? He said, my house is the cool house. I got a basketball court out back. I got a swimming pool. In my basement, I got Xbox, PlayStation. I've got everything teenage kids would want. I got Monster energy drinks and frozen pizzas. He's like, I have everything a teenage boy could ever want in my house. So he said, where do you think my boy and all his little friends want to be every day of the week? My house. He said, so I don't have to worry about my kid being down the street at his friend's house trying to find his friend's dad's porn collection because they want to be in my house. So, but you just pick up these good strategies about being around other good parents, and then you got an extra set of eyes on the kids as well. And so the parent network is huge. Point number 6, and this you could spend all night on, internet and media safety. Look, parents, you have to become computer literate. Because look, good dude, God love you, but like some of you don't even know how to open an email attachment, and your kid is like hacking into the Parliament website for fun after school. It's like, gotta catch up here. And look, dude, like, trust me, I get it. It's overwhelming. Okay, I go into settings, then general, then screen time, then this, then I slide that thing. It's like, what the heck? How do you keep up with this? I think step number 1 is to realize what's at stake if you're not keeping up with this stuff. In fact, I saw a tragic interview with a woman recently who's a nurse in a pediatric unit where they deal with childhood sexual abuse survivors, counseling and helping these kids through their trauma. And you know what the nurse said? She said, what we're seeing all across the globe, what's going on right now, the #1 perpetrator of sexual abuse against children is not the clergy. It's not some live-in boyfriend. It's not some creepy guy on the street trying to sell candy out of his car. Not even close. They said the #1 perpetrator of sexual abuse against children is 11 to 15-year-old boys who have been exposed to pornography. They see it on the phones, they see it on the tablets, and then their 9-year-old sister has a slumber party with the cousin, and the lights are out, the parents are gone, things happen, and it never gets reported. And they're dealing with the fallout. Where are the kids finding the porn? One of the most common places is grandparents' house. It's like, wait, grandparents' house? Why would they see it there? Guess who doesn't have filters on the computers? Oh, here's an iPad, play a fun little video game. And some of these video games look totally innocent. Oh, it's a little ping pong ball. Oh, you want to play another game? Watch this commercial. It's like a 5-second pornographic commercial. Kid clicks into it, they're into a whole world of porn. Pornographers have done what's called porn napping, where they buy up domain names of other websites and fill it with pornographic content. More than 24 websites of the most popular children's toys and games have now been taken and used for porn sites. So your kid Googles for his favorite toy, and he finds this junk. And it isn't only the boys. That's a stereotype. Above the age of 30, there's a significant discrepancy between how many men and women view porn. Under the age of 30, these numbers are almost equal nowadays. And it's hard to believe this, but I'm seeing it. One girl wrote me a letter and she said, Jason, I was addicted to really bad, hardcore internet pornography for years. And she said, I finally broke free and I haven't looked at it in 2 years. And she said, I'm hoping I can stay strong because next year I'm going to be going into high school. And I know the temptations will be worse there. We're talking about a girl exposed to stuff. Now, where are they finding it? One girl told me, she said, Jason, I found out my dad looks at porn. She said, I used to look up to him. Now I can't even look at him. I thought he was a better man than that. She's like, Jason, my dad is lusting after girls who are 2 years older than I am while my mom's sleeping in the next room. And then he erases internet history, thinks we don't know, kisses my mom and goes to work the next day. She said, it makes me sick how much I resent that guy. Another girl told me, she said, I found my dad's porn collection 5 years ago on his computer, and he doesn't know that I know what he looks at. And what he also doesn't know is that his addiction became mine, and I've looked at it every day since for the past 5 years. And so the threat is in the house. And so what we've got to do to guard the family, some of the tools that we use in our family. One, Focus on the Family has a website called pluggedin.com. Pluggedin.com, if you want to write it on your phone, your computer, whatever, hugely helpful. Pluggedin.com will give you movie, television, video game, and music reviews. So if your kid is like, Mom, I want to buy a little video game. It's called Grand Theft Auto. It's like a race car game. Can we get that? Okay, time out. I was at my son's football birthday party for one of his friends. They're like 10 years old, and the kids played in the pool, had some pizza. They're like, what do you guys want to do? And the boy's like, GTA. And the kid's like, yeah, GTA. My kid's like, what's GTA? And I'm like, well, I know what it is, and that's why you don't know what it is. You come in the house, and all the kids pop in the video game Grand Theft Auto, which on the surface looks like a nice little race car game. And the mother was there, and look, I didn't know this woman, but I stayed around at the party to get to know some other parents. And I pulled her aside and I said, ma'am, I know I just met you and I don't want to overstep my bounds and I'm not going to tell you how to run your family, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and take a guess that you probably don't know the video game that they just put into the computer to play, that your kid can drive that car downtown and get out of the car and go into a strip club and watch a full X-rated strip club show. Then he can come out and get a prostitute in the car and engage in the full act of prostitution. When he's done, he can kick her out of the car, drive over her with the vehicle, take the money that he had given her out of her purse, and the video game will keep account for the finances as he's doing all of these things. And as soon as the mom recovered consciousness off the living room carpet, she's like, how does this happen? I just go and buy him some race car game and I'm bringing porn into my own living room? How was I supposed to know? Pluggedin.com will give you the video game reviews. Same thing with music, same thing with TV, same thing with movies. Even before it hits the box office, they will give you a thorough Christian review. This movie says the F word 27 times. These are the scenes of nudity. This is the spiritual content, sexual. It'll lay it all out. So you don't have to waste your time watching it to see if it's okay. And I've got my kids' teachers at the school alerting us, hey, we want to watch this movie. Is that okay for this kid? I look it up. I'm like, yep, green light, good movie. Thanks for letting me know. They're keeping me on tabs on this, and I've even shared it with the schools, and now they're using it to vet what kind of stuff they show the kids. So pluggedin.com has been helpful. Another one is called covenanteyes.com. Like I have made a covenant with my eyes. It's from the book of Job. CovenantEyes.com will give you basically what's going on your kid's internet. So if they look at a pornographic website and they erase their internet history, it's all captured. And so you don't just do this because, hey, we're spying on you. Here's what I'd say. Hey, we're going to put this on everybody's phone in the house so you can know what websites dad's looking at, and dad can know what websites you're looking at, and you can know what websites mom's looking at, because we are going to hold each other accountable as a family to the principles of the gospel. It's not us spying on you. We're all in this battle together as one family. That's a lot easier for them to hold on to. Because my policy with my phone with my kids, hey kids, you want to see dad's phone? It's here anytime you want to see. You want to look at my internet history, music history, social media? It's right there. Anytime you want, you can look at daddy's phone. Because I don't have anything to hide from you. And so what they've realized, okay, if dad is that open with his phone with us, then I think we've got nothing else to do but to be open with him with our phones as well. And so we're kind of on common ground there. Another app that we found to be helpful is called Life 360. Life 360. I know a lot of you may already use this thing, but for those who don't, it's great. Not only does it show you where all your kids are at, it'll show you their driving habits, if they're using their phone while they're driving, if they're accelerating too quickly or slowing down. It's a two-edged sword, though. The other day, I look at my son, I'm like, and all the kids are around. I'm like, dude, Colby, dude, you're going 95 miles an hour, dude. What are you doing? You can't do that. And I talked to him, and the kid's like, well, Dad, what's your top speed for the week? And I'm like, okay, I'll show you. You can look at my phone. And it would pull it up, and it says 220 miles an hour. And the kids are like, Dad. I'm like, dude, it's got to be wrong. And they're like, well, it says 200. And I look, okay, it's a runway, kids. I was at an airport. I was flying, okay? I get a pass for that one. But this is great. I mean, my teenage daughter got hit in a car accident like 3 weeks ago. A person ran a red light, smashed in the side of her car. And so she calls me as soon as the airbags go off, Daddy, I was in a car accident. I said, honey, I'll be there in 5 minutes. She didn't have to tell me where she was because I had the app. I hit the button, bam, I drove straight to her. So Life 360 is an awesome tool. I mean, all this technology can be a blessing and a curse at the same time. And then another tool we use for the kids is called Bark. It's an app that we use largely for the texting. And what Bark will do is it will alert me if they are sending or receiving any text messages that involve violence, sexuality, bullying, vulgar language, or whatever. And you can set the filters to whatever you want. And I tell the kids, hey, we're going to put this on your phone, which is my phone. I'm letting you use it. And I'm not going to see all of your text messages. But if there's a red flag, I'm going to get an alert to that. And what's nice is it also lets me know, okay, which one of their friends has kind of bad language? Which one of the friends they never get alert for, but every time that guy sends a text, man, there's a bad word in that. So it gives me a better sense of where these kids are at. And so between Bark, Life 360, Plugged In, Covenant Eyes, these are tools that you got to get accustomed to. And you could use, if you have, depending on what cell phone carrier you have, some of them can set curfews on the kid's phone. So your phone goes off 10 o'clock on a school night. It goes off midnight on weekends or whatever. So that way your 12-year-old daughter isn't sitting up till 3 o'clock in the morning with her phone buzzing underneath getting text messages throughout the night. You can set the curfew to the phone, not only to the child. And so these tools that I've given you, let's be honest, this is not just to save the kids from porn. This is to save the marriage from it as well. I met one mother and she told me she was getting separated from her husband, and she said, after we separated, she said, I was cleaning out the bedroom and I lifted up my husband's side of the mattress, and underneath it was a big stack of Maxim men's softcore porn magazines. And she said, no matter we had so many struggles with intimacy, the very moment he was supposed to be making love to me, he's using my body to lust after these women in his imagination. The very moment he's supposed to be renewing his wedding vows in the flesh, he's committing adultery in his heart. And so we've got to understand the enemy is after the family more than anything else. And so we've got to be vigilant in purging this stuff out of the family to heal the family. Because how am I going to tell my kids to be pure if I can't even manage my own purity to begin with? And so these tools, and sometimes marital counseling is needed, but this stuff can get healed so you can have the faithful love that you'd promise to each other at that altar, which isn't just the fidelity of the body, but the fidelity of the imagination, the eyes, and the heart as well. And so this is the 6th point, internet safety. Point number 7, if you really want your kid to listen to you, learn how to ask the right questions. And here's what it looks like. A girl came up to me and she said, Jason, I'm thinking of giving away my virginity to this boy. And I said to her, okay, why? And she said, I don't know. And I said, no, you can't say, I don't know. Why do you want to give that gift to that boy? And she thought about it and she said, okay, I want to be wanted. I said, that's a really honest answer. Well, do you think he wants you? She said, yep, I know he wants me. I said, no, do you really think he wants you? She said, no. I go, what do you think he really wants? She said, he just wants sex. I'm like, is that what you want? She's like, oh, no, I'm going to break up with him tomorrow. I'm going to send him a text message right now. I'm like, you go, girl. I didn't tell her what to do. I just asked the right questions, and she owned it, because they say rules without a relationship creates rebellion. This is true between God and humanity. It's also true between parents and children. If we got the rules, but not the relationship, it creates rebellion. And so for daddies and daughters, what I recommend, if you got like a teenage daughter, take her on a daddy-daughter date at least once or twice a month. Nice little fun restaurant, just you and her, nobody else. And the first one might be a little quiet and it's a little bit awkward. Okay, try it again, try it again, try it again. Because I found with my daughters, they open up differently when you carve out that time just for them. For my 11-year-old daughter, when she opens up the most, it's not when the boys are around. The house is crazy. It's at night and I'm putting her to bed and I'll just kind of sit on the edge of her bed. How's your day, honey? Then it all comes out. And that's the moment of the day. Typically, we're trying to get all the kids to bed. Look, I just want to get her to bed. Okay, I just need a little quiet, a little sanity, a little ESPN, just a little quiet time. But if I can just put off that quiet time that I want so badly, and I can just sit and listen, man, the stuff that comes out, that's the time for her, is that it's just daddy and me. And then I can tell her about my day. And then I'm teaching her that she deserves to be listened to by a man. These lessons that are going to stick with them forever. Because I remember seeing one internet meme, and it really hit me. It said, and if you're in a moment of impatience with your kid, just stop and imagine yourself 50 years from now. You're 80 years old or whatever. And now imagine, after your kids have gone off to college and started their families, imagine if you could come back to this 1 minute, 50 years from now. Think of how present you'd be just in that moment with your kids, knowing how short these moments are. And so be present and try to ask the right questions if you want them to open up. Now, point number 8 is the opposite side of this coin. Don't just give them the talk, give them thousands of them. People ask me, when do I give my kid the talk? Like it's some chastity bomb you drop on your kid when they're 13. It's going to inoculate them from lust forever. It's like, dude, you don't do that with anything. You don't give your kid the math talk. Like, when do we have the English talk? When do we have the math lesson? It's like, no, they get 12 years of formation in that before they go to college. It's got to be the same thing with human sexuality. This is not a talk, it's a conversation. And obviously when you do give the birds and bees talk, it could be a little bit awkward, but that's part of the authenticity of it. In fact, a friend of mine is like a professional speaker, sexuality, God, Catholicism, and he thought when he told his kid how babies are made, it would just be beautiful and the kid would love it. The boy was disgusted. And he said to the dad, "Dad, how long have people been doing this?" And I said, "Tell him the 1960s. And he said, "Dad, is there any other way?" And that's pretty much it, son. And then later on, the little girl came to the dad and said, "Daddy, I want to be like the Blessed Virgin Mary." And the dad said, "That's great." She said, "Yes, I want to get pregnant before I'm married." And he's like, no, that's not the moral of the story there. So look, could be a little bit awkward, but it's kind of part of the authenticity. Just get the conversation going, which leads us to point number 9. Get over your insecurities when it comes to talking about sexuality with your kids. I don't care if your parents never talk to you about it. You cannot afford to be silent, because if you are quiet, the world will fill the void of your silence with a very contrary message. And a lot of parents are afraid because they're like, I wasn't perfect. I'd get married to some spotless virgin. What if my kid said, "Well, Dad, how far did you mom go? Were you a virgin?" I'll look like a hypocrite. Well, look at it. The way that I look at it is this. Your authority does not come from your perfection. It comes from your parenthood that's given to you by God. Your past is your personal business. Your kid has no right to that information. If you think it would be helpful to share some of that at the right time and the right way, that's up to your discernment. With our kids, they'll know, because we're doing all these chastity talks. I share about how I had struggled with pornography growing up in high school and how I finally got rid of it. My wife shares her testimony openly that she was sexually abused as a little girl, lost her virginity at 15 and lived a bad life and then turned it all around. Like, it's public knowledge. And so we know eventually all of our kids will eventually know this information. But I would hope that they look at us like when we share that with the teens. When I tell teenage boys that I struggled with porn growing up, they don't look at me as a hypocrite for telling them not to do it anymore. They see that, okay, there's authenticity here. And so obviously, like I said, your kid doesn't have a right to that information, but don't let yourself be muzzled by that. And it's also important that dads not just dump it on the moms. Well, you're the mom. You're the religious, ethical, spiritual person. You talk to them about that stuff. Well, you're the dad and you need to talk to him about girls. Okay, let's go fishing. Son, do you have any questions about girls? Nope. Okay, we're done with that. Let's catch some bass now. Like, it ain't gonna work. Because look, if the mom is the one who harps about religion and morality and spirituality and dad says nothing, the kids will automatically assume dad disagrees with mom, but he's just being respectful. Because you know, dad, wink, wink, boys are going to be boys. Because if you really agree with mom, why are you so quiet over there? Your silence is deafening the family. And so this is why the church teaches that when it comes to birds and bees, dad should talk to boys, mom talk to girls. But when it comes to human sexuality in general, chastity, father and mother both must be speaking. Now, if you're a single parent, you might think, well, who am I to say? I don't have a husband. I don't have a wife. Like, who am I? You have a certain advantage of sorts because you're not asking your kid to practice a lifestyle that you yourself are not practicing daily as well. You're in the same boat as them. Whether you're 35 or 15, God's standard of innocence is the same. To be perfect as the Heavenly Father is perfect. Which draws us to the final point. And I've saved this for last because it's the most demanding and the most effective way to raise kids in chastity. Chastity is a virtue, like courage or honesty, that applies to our sexuality. All of the virtues are more easily caught than they are taught. So if I want my kid to be humble, I don't give him a humility speech. I should practice that, and he'll pick it up. If I want my boys to be gentle with women, I bet if I'm gentle with my wife, they'll kind of pick that up. Same thing with chastity. Don't expect for a minute that your kids will obey the church's teachings on sexuality before marriage if you refuse to obey the church's teaching on sexuality inside of marriage. Chastity in marriage. Now, that term is very confusing because people don't understand the word chastity itself. In fact, I knew a mom came to one of my talks and she said, yeah, I was coming to your talk tonight and my husband, as I was leaving, said, where are you going tonight? And she said, oh, I'm going to the chastity talk. And he looked at her and he said, well, don't get any ideas while you're there. Okay, look. It's a misunderstanding. It doesn't mean abstinence. It means you use the gift of sex according to God's plan for your state in life. And so what does it mean to obey the church's teaching on sexuality in marriage? Obviously, it means no pornography. Obviously, it means fidelity to each other. Not only purity of the actions, but of the intentions. And also when it comes time to planning our family, do we listen to the church on this? Do I actually trust God's plan for our family? And it doesn't mean we'll just have as many kids as you can possibly have. Look, the church will never tell you how many kids to have, but God will. And we'll sit around the dinner table, bless us, O Lord. Okay, he's Lord in the dinner table. Is he Lord in the bedroom? Do we trust God with our family? Do we trust the church's teachings on our human sexuality? If we're willing to practice this virtue as husbands and wives, our kids will start to see the big picture. Because what am I going to tell my kid? You need to be abstinent for the next 10 years of your life, but I'm not willing to obey the church's teaching on sexuality and how I'm supposed to live this out. But if we're willing to take up this cross with them, it's going to be demanding, but they'll see the big picture. One girl told me the reason she doesn't have sex is because of her dad. She said, my dad came up to my mom once, and she said he gave her this big two-fisted hug, then looked over the shoulder at the daughter and said, you know, Ashley, all I want for you is one day that you could find a man who loves you as much as I love your mother. And for the girl, case closed. She doesn't need philosophy, theology. She sees the way a man loves a woman. And if she can see that, then she can let go of all the counterfeits that are thrown her way throughout life. This is why the church calls your family the school of love. Because everything you need to know of love, you learn in the family. Because look, if you can love your family members, you can love anybody on the face of the earth. I mean, love thy neighbor is a piece of cake. I hardly ever see those people. I mean, love the nut jobs in my house, like that is a completely different command altogether. But that's why I think if your kids can graduate high school and they just know how to say, I love you, I forgive you, and I'm sorry, I think you did an awesome job of raising those kids. But if they go off to college and they don't know how to say, I love you, I forgive you, and I'm sorry, dude, good luck in that marriage one day. Because I don't know about your marriages, but some days that's all we have to say to each other. I love you, forgive you, and I'm sorry. Like, couldn't say that, there wouldn't be a whole lot to say. And in the end, there is no perfect formula. I knew one dad, he said, before I got married, I had 8 theories on how to raise kids, but I had no kids. And he said, now I have 8 kids and I have no theories left on how to raise them. It just feels like that sometimes. But sometimes it's comforting to look at the saints. Saint Therese of Lisieux is a Catholic saint. Her mother was a Catholic saint. Her father was a Catholic saint. Her sister got kicked out of Catholic boarding school 3 times for behavioral problems. I love it. It's like, and then she finally got her act together when she was 37 years old and became a nun. But it's great to see dysfunction in the holiest of families. So that way you don't beat yourselves up. Because I mean, some saints had the most godly, parents. Other saints, I read one guy, his mom owned a brothel and he became a Catholic saint. Other times, the parents are pagans and heathens, and the kid becomes a saint. There's no perfect formula at the end of the day. And I don't know about your marriages, but it's a lot messier than I thought it was going to be. Raising kids, it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But you know what? The beauty is God is with us in the mess. And so to help you with your mess, from my mess, we have created resources for families that are going to be available afterwards. And I'll just run through what they are. First, because you're the primary sex educators, my friend Chris Stefanik and I wrote a book called Raising Pure Teens. It's basically different strategies that you can use on a daily basis at home. So it's like taking this book and really fleshing it out in a deeper way. So that one's Raising Pure Teens. For the kids, we've got 2 booklets, one for the boys, one for the girls, called Pure Manhood and Pure Womanhood. And so these little books, we did the talk today, and the girls came up after me, where's the book? Where's the book? I want the book. We did one talk, and a girl came up, because in the middle of this is a dump him list, okay? It's like 16 reasons to dump a guy. So I gave a talk. Before the talk, a girl came in and sat down in the bleachers. Her boyfriend comes and he sits behind her and he wraps his arms and legs around her during the assembly. And at first it seemed like she appreciated his tentacles or whatever, but then like, as the talk went on, I noticed she was getting a little awkward. She starts scooting away from the guy, but at the end of the talk, she's totally away. And then she comes down to the table afterwards and she's looking around. She's like, what's that book you have with the 16 reasons to dump a guy? I'm like, that book is right here, sweetheart. So that one is the Pure Womanhood book, and then like the Pure Manhood book for the guys. But for the guys, we wanted to go a little bigger, and so we created a book for the guys called Dating Blueprint. And what this is actually teaches them how to date. When to date, why to date, how to date, who to date, and then actually how to ask a girl on a date. We surveyed all these women, asking them, what do you wish we knew about dating? Because I started writing the book, and then I quit, because I'm like, dude, guys don't care what I think about dating. Guys want to know what the women think about dating. But here's the problem. Girls don't want to tell the guy what they want the guy to know, because they want it to come from him and not from her. I'm like, how do you get around that? So I look at the analytics of our social media. We got 100,000 girls following us. So I said, girls, tell me, how do you want to be asked out on a date? How do you not want to be asked out on a date? Where do you want to go on a first date? All these specifics. And then I said, leave your comments below. I'll put it in the book. Oh boy, the floodgates opened. Women submitted like 30,000 words of feedback, but it was gold, but really specific stuff. Like when you ask her out, you can't do it through a text message. That's cowardly, it's lame, it's insincere. You got to ask her out face to face. If she says yes, plan the date. Don't sit around. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? We can play Minecraft. I don't know. Like, you plan the date. And then if you take her to a date, like let's say you take her to you tell the guy, plan a date, they'll be like, oh, dinner and a movie. No, the movie's the #1 place the women said they don't want to go on a first date. And the guy's like, why not? Dinner and a movie. Like, oh, come on. Like, you bring her to the movies and you take her home, you're like, I really enjoyed getting to know you better tonight. And she's like, we just watched Kong beat up Godzilla for 3 hours, and you think you know me better because of that? No. Take her place, you can talk and have some fun. And if you take her to a restaurant, I tell the guys, pick her seat for her, because you're not telling her where to sit. If it's a beautiful view, give her the view. If there's no view, the guy should take the seat facing her and then the wall, so she knows during dinner your attention is on her, not on the rugby game, not on the cute little hostess walking by, and it makes her feel honored. You tell us the young guys, like, oh, that's good, that's good. But most important chapter I tell the guys is the last one. It's how to date your wife. And I put it in there because I met a woman once, and she said, Jason, I've been married for 30 years. She said, do you know the last date my husband took me on was the night he proposed to me 30 years ago. And he's never taken me on another date since. 3 decades, no dates. Contrast that to a friend of mine who lives in Texas. He's been married for 20 years, and never once has he ever missed his weekly date night with his bride in 20 years. Rain or shine, he takes her on a date. It doesn't matter if the kids are sick in the living room and throwing up in buckets. Like, they don't care. They'll drug him out with Benadryl and have a date in the kitchen at midnight. Like, he's gonna have a date with his wife. And I'm telling you, man, that guy's kids are gonna know how to date because their parents never forgot how to date. Dating is such a mess today because so many married couples forgot how to date each other. And now we got a culture of single people who pretend like they're dating, the dating people behave like they're married, and the married people seem to think they're single. Everything is just one step out of order. In fact, we were at a high school the other day, and a girl picked up this book off the table because we give them away for free at the assemblies, and she starts carrying it away. I'm like, oh, well, you know that's the book for the guys, right? She said, I know. I want to give it to my dad because I want him to start dating my mom again. This is where it's got to begin, because it's so easy. Those kids got all these problems. It's like, no, let's just start dating each other, and I think a lot of the stuff will sort itself out. You know, just to start with the simple stuff. And so this is a book for the boys on the dating blueprint. But the challenge we have for the guys, we got one. We say, look, you're not allowed to ask a girl on a date if you're still looking at porn. You can't do it. Can't ask a woman to commit to you unless you're ready to be faithful to her. But guys will say, look, I get it. Porn's bad. I'm trying to get free. And I'm good for like 3 weeks, and then I mess it up. And then I'm good for a month, and I fall back to the same dumb habits I've had since I'm 12 years old. How do you break free once and for all? So an Australian friend of mine, Matt Fradd, and I got together, wrote a book called Forge. It's a 33-day game plan that guys can do together, fathers can do with sons. As soon as I finished the manuscript, the first person who read the book was my son and I together. 33 days in a row, just reading this book one day at a time to get these weapons to battle lust for the rest of our lives. So that's the Forge book for the guys. If You Really Loved Me is answers to the top 100 questions on dating, relationships, and sexuality. How far is too far? Why do I have to dress modestly? Why is the church against this? All these questions. How do I know she's the right one for me? When do I start dating? Is in the If You Really Loved Me book. There's another one we just published called Male, Female, Other, a Catholic Guide to Understanding Gender. It's a deep dive into this whole issue. How do we respond as Catholics, not only with clarity, but with charity? How do we accompany family members, like I have in my family, who identify as trans? I've got a cousin who does. Like, okay, how do we walk with these people in truth and in love? And so this book, it kind of breaks down how we are going to respond with love as Catholics and with clarity. There's more than 1,000 references in the endnotes, so it's deeply researched as well. So that one tackles the gender subject. There's one introducing you to theology of the body, a prayer book called Pure Faith. And then the favorite book I ever wrote was a biography of my hero, St. John Paul II. It's a collection of stories of the Holy Father that were not released until after he passed away. All his different assassination attempts. People think it was the one time he got shot. He was actually stabbed by a priest in Fatima a year after he was shot. Different miracles he performed, so if you love John Paul, you'll enjoy that. And then Perusia Media also has books for kids. They're not available tonight, but they do have them on their website. Biblical ABCs, coloring books for kids. We've got to start with the kids when they're real young. And so all that stuff is available on Perusia websites and on their table over here for sale. And then lastly, there is a little brochure about our ministry at Chastity Project. If you want to learn more about it, our resources, our websites, our podcast, or if you want to donate to support our mission, all that stuff is on here. So all that stuff is either for sale, a couple handouts for free, but the best free thing we've got for you tonight is this. I've asked lots of people to be praying for you and for your families. And coming over here, I get on all my social media channels. Hey, going over to Australia, we got talks about 6,500 people. Please pray for them. Oh, we're praying for you in Kenya, praying for you in the Philippines. All these prayers are descending on you. But St. Therese said it's a much better thing to talk to God than to talk about God. So let's wrap our time up before the break in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Father in heaven, we thank you for the gift of our families. We ask your Holy Spirit to come upon them for the grace of healing in our family where that's needed, and forgiveness, the gift of mercy. We pray for an increase in the virtue of prayer and purity in our hearts. And we pray for our kids for their vocations. God, if you're calling them to the priesthood or religious life, we ask you to give them the gift of faith and courage there. If we're calling our kids to the married life, we pray for their future husbands or wives so that they could come from good families and be protected from the evil one. And we just ask for, again, healing in our marriages, for your direction, and that you would increase in us our trust in you so that we can receive the blessings that you wish to give to us. And we ask this all, Jesus, in your holy and healing name. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.